every Friday at 2:58. Beep! A card reader chirps and a pair of sneakers race past. Always the same, two siblings, a worn-out blue backpack swinging like a pendulum. Colby Ashford noticed, and Colby didn't miss much. He'd built a fortune buying neglected properties and fixing what others ignored. But this was different. The concierge waved the children toward a dim side exit. Colby's jaw tightened. The exit led to door 5B, a shortcut into shadows where cameras never reached. 3 Fridays, same backpack, same door override, same exact minute. Colby froze on the monitor. Door 5B, manual override. Not a resident code, a technician code. That meant someone on the inside, an adult, was funneling those kids out into danger. He felt the air sharpen. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a system. Colby had no proof beyond logs and hunches. If he stormed in, he'd scare the kids, maybe lose the trail. So he stayed still, muscles coiled. He pressed save, screenshot, timestamp. Friday, 2:58, blue backpack. The siblings disappeared down the dark corridor. Colby whispered under his breath, "Not on my watch." From that moment, the quiet landlord became something else entirely, a guardian in plain clothes. The fight had begun, though no one else even knew it yet. Colby Ashford wasn't reckless. He'd seen fortunes vanish when people acted without a plan. So, he built one. Step 1, confirm the pattern. Step 2, secure evidence no one could dismiss. Step 3, shut it down, legally, permanently. He scrolled through access logs, cold eyes searching for rhythm. Fridays, always within 10 minutes of 3. Door 5B, the same override code, a clean pattern carved into digital stone. At the lobby desk, the attendant muttered, almost offhand, "Happens every Friday, like clockwork." Colby's pulse ticked. If the staff already saw it as routine, danger was camouflaged in plain sight. He clenched his pen, drew a triangle. Lobby 5B, alley. The funnel was obvious once mapped, but obvious wasn't enough. He needed irrefutable proof. The kids were pawns in someone's careless or deliberate shortcut. He couldn't charge in fists first. This wasn't about brawls. It was about accountability. His objective crystallized: protect Maya and Dean Keller, build a case no board or court could ignore. Close the loophole that let strangers treat children like afterthoughts. Colby saved the log entries, cross-filed them by time. Each beep, each override, a breadcrumb in a trail he refused to let go cold. The rules of this war were simple: patience, evidence, and resolve. He whispered again to himself, as though swearing an oath, "I'll win this clean." By Sunday, Colby had a folder. By Thursday, he had a case. The logs didn't lie. 3 consecutive Fridays, door 5B showed a manual override at the exact same minute, 2:58 p.m. Every time the blue backpack bobbed past the camera, a neon flag waving in silence. The more he stared, the more his gut burned. This wasn't randomness. It was choreography. Somebody with access was leading children into risk like a conductor with a baton. He slowed the footage. The clock ticked. The backpack flickered into frame. Same second, same stride, same fading glow of the exit sign. And always the same detail. Dean lagged. Maya tugged his sleeve, pulling him into shadows. Colby didn't sleep easy. He knew predators hid behind repetition, carving grooves until danger felt like routine. And routines kill faster than storms. But fury wouldn't serve. Cold clarity would. He printed the logs, circled the timestamps in black ink. He built a grid: date, time, override, witness. It looked sterile until you saw the repetition. Then it looked damning. The blue backpack wasn't just nylon and zippers. It was a siren, a warning. And now, Colby had proof it wasn't just his imagination, it was a pattern. Patterns could be prosecuted. He stacked the papers, slid them into a manila folder, and whispered the children's names. Maya, Dean, I see you. I won't let this stand. Friday came again. Colby's eyes locked on the screen. The camera over 5B's frame showed movement. This time, not just kids. A gloved hand stretched out, holding the door open. Not a child's hand. An adult. The fingers curled around the handle, steady, practiced. The children hesitated, glancing down the dark corridor. Maya's shoulders stiffened. She pressed Dean forward, as though absorbing the risk herself. Colby felt his chest tighten. This was no longer theory. Someone was guiding them, nudging them toward shadows. He zoomed in, but the camera angle betrayed him. The adult's face stayed just out of view. Only the hand, the push, the children's reluctant steps. Enough to raise alarms, not enough to name a suspect. Frustration boiled, but he didn't lash out. He documented. Frame freeze, still capture, red time code blinking, 2:58 p.m. He saved it, logged it, sealed it in his evidence chain. The lobby's ambient hum faded in his ears, replaced by the drumbeat of his own resolve. He'd crossed a threshold. No one could tell him now it was coincidence. This was coercion, and coercion leaves scars. Colby leaned back, whispering to the silent monitor, "You're not invisible anymore." The pattern was confirmed. The danger was real, and the fight to end it had officially escalated. Colby dialed the management hotline, voice steady but clipped. "I have repeated overrides on door 5B involving minors. I want security posted or the door sealed." A pause, keyboard clatter, then the scripted reply. "Sir, without identification of a perpetrator, there is insufficient basis to act. Please resubmit with more detail." Colby stared at the phone, jaw tightening. Insufficient basis? 3 weeks, same door, same kids, same override. And that wasn't enough. The line buzzed with bureaucratic emptiness. They wanted a name, a smoking gun, not just timestamps and a child's flinch. He felt the heat rise in his chest, but forced it down. Losing composure would only confirm their dismissal. "Noted," he said flatly and hung up. He wrote the words in his log. Management refusal. Insufficient basis. His pen pressed so hard it nearly tore the page. The children were still being funneled through shadows, and the people paid to prevent it had just shrugged. This wasn't a dead end, it was a checkpoint, and checkpoints could be bypassed. Colby took a slow breath, recalling a principle that had made him a millionaire landlord in the first place. Systems break at their weakest point. The hotline was one, legal liability was another. If management wanted more detail, he would give them a dossier they couldn't ignore. He closed the folder, the hum of the lobby echoing in his ears. The war had moved to a higher level, and Colby Ashford wasn't going to lose it by playing small. Colby knew when to bring in specialists. Money meant nothing if he couldn't spend it to shield children. So he called Kara Winthrop, a tenants' rights attorney known for scalpel-sharp filings, and Ari Feldman, a data auditor with a reputation for dismantling bad access systems. Kara's voice over speakerphone was brisk. "You've got timestamps and video. Good. That's evidence. Start a chain of custody. Every file signed, sealed, backed up." Ari cut in, his tone methodical. "I'll trace the override codes. If it's a contractor backdoor, I'll prove it." Colby felt the first flicker of guarded hope. He wasn't alone anymore. Within hours, Kara issued a formal case ID. Ari drafted retention protocols. Colby signed the letters, notarized, filed. The case had legs now, legal ones. He replayed the gloved hand pushing children into darkness. This time, it didn't feel like helpless rage. It felt like an exhibit waiting for the right courtroom. The clock ticked toward Friday, the 4th in a row. But now, Colby wasn't a solitary landlord scribbling notes in the margins of access logs. He was flanked by an attorney and an auditor, each armed with tools sharper than fists. He whispered, almost as if to the children themselves, "Hold on, we're building something bigger than fear." The bridge had been built. The fight was moving from suspicion to structure. Friday afternoon, 2:55. The siblings hurried toward the lobby, blue backpack swinging. Colby's pulse quickened. Any moment, the hand might appear again, steering them toward shadows. Not this time. A new table stood in the lobby, piled with paperbacks and children's novels. A cardboard sign read, "Free Friday Book Swap." Maya stopped first, curiosity snagging her stride. Dean drifted closer, small hands grazing the covers. Colby lingered at a distance, expression neutral, but every nerve taut. The lobby clerk smiled, deliberately slow in restocking. "Hang on, kids. Plenty to choose from." The seconds stretched, 90 of them. 90 in which the override code blinked useless on door 5B. 90 in which the gloved hand never appeared. Colby breathed, but only shallowly. He wasn't rescuing them. Not yet. He was buying time, quietly disrupting the rhythm without ever stepping into their space. Maya picked a paperback, holding it close as if it were treasure. Dean pocketed a free bookmark, grinning. Colby noted the clock. Delay successful, route diverted. No confrontation, no alarm, just children lingering in light instead of being rushed into dark. Sometimes protection meant shields, other times it meant clever pauses. This was one of those times. He whispered to himself, "Safe for now, but temporary fixes won't hold. We need the route sealed." Late that night, Ari called. His voice carried the weight of confirmation. "Colby, The override isn't resident activity, it's a service technician code, a backdoor built into the system. Anyone with that contractor fob can push kids through 5B and disappear. Colby gripped the phone tighter. So it was systemic. Not random. A loophole disguised as maintenance protocol. The realization chilled him. The children weren't slipping through by chance. They were being ushered out because infrastructure allowed it, because adults preferred shortcuts to safety. Tech override, Ari repeated. Not traceable to an individual tenant. That's why management brushed you off. They know it's baked in. Colby sat in silence, eyes fixed on the monitor, replaying Maya's cautious glance down the corridor. The kids weren't imagining the unease. They felt the wrongness, even if they couldn't name it. He scribbled 2 words in his logbook: systemic failure. This wasn't just about Maya and Dean anymore. If a backdoor existed for them, it existed for every child, every resident. Colby's anger settled into steel. Loopholes could be closed, contracts could be amended, cities could be forced to confront shadows they'd ignored. "Thanks, Ari," he said, his voice low but certain. "Now we know where to strike." The case had crossed from suspicion to fact, from coincidence to systemic flaw. And with that knowledge, Colby felt the fight tilt in his favor. He leaned back, whispering the same vow he'd made at the start. "Not on my watch." The next morning, Colby approached the lobby clerk quietly. He didn't ask for gossip, he asked for courage. "You've seen them use door 5B, right? Fridays? Same time." The clerk hesitated, eyes darting to the cameras overhead. Then, a slow nod. "Yeah, every week. Looks wrong, but not my call." Colby placed a clipboard on the desk, chain of custody form already printed. "Make it your call today. Just write what you saw. Sign here, 1 copy for me, 1 sealed for records." The pen hovered, then scratched across the page. It was short, but it was official. A statement, a witness. Colby pressed the seal sticker firmly, felt the adhesive bite. Evidence. Real evidence was no longer just digital shadows. It was ink, paper, signatures. He photographed the access log side by side with the wall clock, time and action locked together. No one could later claim they were out of sync. The folder thickened, its weight both literal and moral. This was no longer a private concern scribbled in a landlord's notes. It was a file, a case. Colby's anger cooled into something sharper, precision. Passion might ignite the fight, but paperwork won it. As he closed the folder, he whispered, "Maya, Dean, you have a witness now, and soon you'll have justice." Friday arrived with new tension. Harborgate, the management company, had issued a quiet memo. Move pickups earlier to ease congestion. Colby spotted the ripple instantly. At 2:50, the siblings were already being tugged toward 5B. The gloved hand was quicker, more insistent. The danger was accelerating. Colby's pulse surged, but he didn't rush in. He calculated. If he made a scene, management could claim hysteria, dismiss him as paranoid. Instead, he created a gentle barricade. A rolling cart stacked with water jugs just happened to slide across the hallway. He offered an apologetic smile to the hand behind the children. "My bad. Let me fix this." The path narrowed. The delay stretched. The hand lost momentum. For 30 crucial seconds, the children stayed in light instead of vanishing into shadow. Inside, Colby was seething. Management wasn't neutral anymore. They were complicit, knowingly funneling risk onto children. But outwardly, he stayed calm, courteous, impossible to fault. His notebook captured the moment. Memo issued. Hand tugged harder. Cart delay effective. The pattern wasn't just repeating, it was spiking. That meant the system was feeling the pressure. And when systems start to strain, that's when cracks reveal themselves. Colby whispered under his breath, "Keep straining. We'll snap you clean." That evening, reinforcements arrived. Kara stepped into the lobby in a dark blazer, eyes scanning with a litigator's precision. Ari followed, laptop bag slung across his shoulder, already pulling up access diagnostics. No fanfare, no spectacle, just quiet professionals entering a battlefield disguised as a residential tower. Colby briefed them with clipped efficiency. Kids funneled at 2:58. Override code confirmed contractor. Clerk signed statement. Harborgate issued a memo to accelerate. Kara's jaw set. "That's enough for preliminary action. We'll secure the site without escalating panic." Ari slipped a laminated maintenance in progress sign onto door 5B. The corridor was subtly rerouted. Residents flowed naturally toward the lit main lobby, never noticing the trap had been shut. For the first time, Colby felt the weight lift slightly. He wasn't a lone watchman anymore. He was part of a team with rules, strategy, and authority. The children arrived at their usual time, but instead of shadows, they found a lobby buzzing with harmless detours. They browsed the book swap again, unaware of the legal fortress forming around them. Kara whispered to Colby, barely audible, "We have it. Don't break formation now." Colby nodded. Alone, he'd been fueled by anger. Together, they were powered by discipline. The game had shifted, and so had the odds. Ari spent the weekend tracing every line of data, every blip in the logs. What he discovered chilled the room. "This isn't just a bad door," he said, laying out the map. "It's a funnel." The diagram showed a grim pipeline: lobby, door 5B, unlit corridor, alleyway, bus stop. The sequence wasn't random. It was designed by absence: missing lights, unmonitored corners, overlooked codes. Colby leaned over the map, eyes narrowing. The gloved hand wasn't the only threat. The building itself was complicit, its infrastructure guiding children into blind spots. Kara exhaled sharply. "This is bigger than one landlord dispute. It's systemic negligence." Colby felt his stomach twist. He'd started out protecting 2 siblings. Now he was staring at a blueprint for risk affecting dozens, maybe hundreds. The realization didn't weaken him. It hardened him. A single child was enough to fight for. But an entire pipeline of children being ushered into danger, that was a war worth waging. "This isn't a one-off," Ari repeated. "It's a pipeline." Colby tapped the map. "Then we cut the pipeline, permanently." The blueprint on the table glowed under the desk lamp, a chilling reminder that darkness is rarely an accident. It's built, brick by brick, and it could be torn down the same way. Ari's map didn't just trace hallways, it bled into the city. The funnel from door 5B spilled onto a block notorious for broken lamps and shadowed corners. At its edge sat transit stop 214. Colby's eyes locked on the coordinates. "That's where they end up." Ari nodded grimly. Every time. 3 prior incidents reported at that stop. Petty assaults, attempted grabs, filed under insufficient lighting. Kara tightened her arms across her chest. "So this isn't just a building problem, it's a city hazard." The weight settled in Colby's gut. What began as protecting 2 children had revealed a blind corridor stretching into civic neglect. Maya's blue backpack wasn't just a signal, it was a flare pointing to a systemic danger zone. He zoomed the map until the bus stop glowed lilac on the screen. The symbol for a single light pole flickered faintly. The city had logged the outage, then forgotten it. Colby muttered, "Forgotten until now." He imagined the siblings waiting under that dead lamp, shadows long, faces anxious. That vision locked into his resolve. He didn't just want the door sealed, he wanted every shadow on that block burned away. "This is the target," he declared. "We don't just block a door, we light the entire path." The blueprint was no longer a static map. It had become a mission, one address, one city block. And from that starting point, the fight could ripple outward. Colby wasn't one for slogans, but this time, he knew a movement needed a name. In a quiet meeting with Kara Airy and Councilwoman Dana Keegan, he laid a folder on the table. Inside was a single sheet, bold font, 2 words, lit routes. "Every kid deserves a bright path," Colby said simply. The room went silent. Dana's gaze lingered on the title. Airy gave a slow nod. Kara's lips curved into the faintest smile. It wasn't just branding, it was a vow. A vow that shortcuts would no longer dictate children's safety. Colby explained the vision: mapping unsafe corridors, funding lights, rerouting foot traffic into monitored areas. Data-backed, legally sound, morally unshakable. "This isn't a charity," he continued. "It's a blueprint for cities. We close one loophole, then another. One block, then 100. The gloved hand on door 5B had sparked outrage. But outrage without form vanishes. Now, outrage had form. It had a name, a plan, a spine. Dana leaned forward. "If you get me hard evidence, I'll pilot this through council." Colby pressed the folder across the table. "Then consider this the beginning. From that night forward, it was no longer just about Maya and Dean. It was about every child walking home through shadows, and the movement to light their way had just been born. Kara was ruthless in her precision. "We play this clean," she insisted. "No direct contact with the children, no public shaming, no evidence outside lawful channels." Colby agreed. He'd built empires by respecting structure. This battle would be no different. Together, they drafted rules of engagement. Every photo time-stamped, every statement notarized, every move measured against the law. Harborgate couldn't paint them as reckless vigilantes. They would stand as disciplined advocates. Ari produced wristbands for roles, red for observer, blue for evidence handler, green for legal counsel. It looked absurd, almost theatrical, but it meant clarity. No blurred lines when accusations came flying. Colby clipped on the red band. He wasn't there to grandstand. He was there to shield, to witness, to log. The team rehearsed contingencies. If Harborgate challenged them, Kara spoke. If data was questioned, Ari presented. If residents asked, Colby deflected calmly. It wasn't enough to want victory, they had to deserve it. And deserved victories are built on restraint. When the clock struck 2:50 that Friday, Colby stood near the lobby with his wristband hidden under his sleeve. The children passed safely through, unaware of the silent guardrails now framing their path. Kara's voice in his ear was steady. "We're inside the rules. Hold formation." Colby whispered back, "Then let's win it by the book." The following week, Colby faced the boardroom. No shadows now, just fluorescent light, polished wood, and a dozen skeptical faces. He laid the evidence down like a surgeon laying out instruments, access logs, camera stills, a contractor's email admitting service override codes, a city map showing outages. Kara spoke with calm authority. "This is systemic negligence. Children are at risk because of an unsafe override practice. We move to suspend Door 5B access until corrected." The Harborgate reps shifted uneasily. They muttered about contracts, about cost, but the room's oxygen had changed. The exhibits were undeniable. A vote was called. Colby's heart thudded as hands raised. One after another, the motion passed. Door 5B override suspended. It wasn't the final battle, but it was a breach. A clean strike into the heart of negligence. Colby sat back, not in triumph, but in vigilance. Victories mean little if you don't hold the ground you win. The HVAC hummed overhead. The gavel tapped softly, and in that sterile boardroom, a quiet landlord had just forced a corporation to blink. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the shadows had been contained. The file had grown thick, but now it was time to thread the pieces together. Colby, Ari, and Kara laid everything on the table, exhibit by exhibit. First came the access logs. Every Friday, 2:58 p.m., Door 5B override. Then the camera stills. The blue backpack, Maya tugging Dean, the gloved hand. Next, the vendor's email admitting that technician fobs could bypass security with a universal code. Finally, the city's 3-woven map, 3 prior complaints about lighting failures near Stop 214. Each piece alone was concerning. Together, they were devastating. Ari circled the timestamps in red, aligning them with the video frames. "Here," he said, tapping the page. "Override at 2:58. Same second the backpack crosses frame. It matches 3 weeks in a row." Probability of coincidence is near zero. Kara slid the exhibits into evidence sleeves, numbered and signed. Chain of custody intact. No one can dismiss this as hearsay. Colby watched the stack grow, a grim pride settling over him. He wasn't chasing phantoms anymore. He was carrying proof heavy enough to move policy. The folder no longer felt like paper. It felt like a weapon, cold, sharp, lawful. He whispered as he sealed the final exhibit. "You wanted names? You wanted detail? Here it is, indisputable." The case was ready to walk into any hearing, any courtroom. The truth was now bulletproof. Harborgate wasn't about to fold quietly. The day after the board vote, building staff flicked a switch. Non-essential lighting cut off across the corridors, including the stretch near Door 5B. The hallway dimmed to a sick amber glow, shadows spilling long across the floor. A clear message: push us, and we'll push back. Colby felt the adrenaline surge. Retaliation that risked residents just to spite him. He didn't shout. He acted. He logged the blackout, snapped photos of the hall, documented timestamps. Then he ordered emergency lighting units installed at his own expense. Invoices marked clearly "Safety Mitigation." The corridor lit up again, sterile but safe. Every bulb a rebuke to Harborgate's pettiness. Ari's jaw clenched. They're trying to play chicken with liability. Kara's tone was colder. And they just handed us evidence of retaliation. Colby stood in the quiet glow of the relit hall, his reflection caught in the stainless panel. They thought they could intimidate him with shadows. They forgot he made his fortune by fixing the neglected, by turning dark corners profitable. He whispered to himself, "You dim it, I'll light it brighter." The kinetic twist had arrived. Management was escalating the fight. But escalation only gave Colby more leverage and more reason to finish what he started. At a tenants' forum, Colby finally crossed paths with the children's guardian. Lee Keller, their aunt, sat near the back, protective eyes on Maya and Dean as they leafed through donated books. Colby approached carefully, Kara at his side as counsel. This wasn't about drama, it was about dignity. "Ms. Keller," Colby said softly, "I'm Colby Ashford. I manage several units here. I need to tell you something important." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion, then widened as Kara slid the evidence folder across the table. The photographs, the logs, the proof that her niece and nephew had been funneled through shadows. Lee's face strained. She gripped Maya's shoulder tighter. "They told me it was safe. Every Friday I trusted..." Her voice broke. Colby spoke gently, firm but respectful. "This isn't your fault, but it is happening, and we can stop it. With your consent, we'll include your statement in our case. And in the meantime, we'll reroute the children safely." Lee hesitated, then signed the form Kara presented. Her hand shook, but her resolve was clear. Colby bowed his head slightly, as though accepting a sacred trust. The children's safety was no longer an abstraction. It had a guardian's signature, binding them together in a shared duty. As Maya clutched her new paperback and Dean hugged his backpack, Colby whispered, "You're not alone anymore." The following week, the plan unfolded with precision. At dismissal time, a team of volunteers formed what educators called a walking school bus. Adults with neon vests, steady strides, and warm smiles guided clusters of children along the brightly lit lobby and out the main doors. Maya and Dean blended into the group, protected by the rhythm of numbers. Meanwhile, Ari moved the evidence off-site. Every log, every photo, every witness statement encrypted and uploaded to secure cloud storage. Backups layered like armor. To throw off suspicion, a decoy rumor spread that Colby was focused on rent audits, not security. Harborgate leaned into the distraction, wasting time preparing for a financial dispute while the real case grew sharper. Colby walked at the rear of the school bus line, red wristband hidden under his sleeve, his gaze sweeping the sidewalks. The route was open, the lights steady. The gloved hand never appeared. As the group reached the crosswalk near the transit stop, brake lights from passing cars painted the asphalt in streaks of red. Children laughed, unaware of how close shadows had once pressed. Ari texted a single line, "Evidence archived. Clean." Colby exhaled, the knot in his chest loosening just slightly. The children were safe tonight. The proof was untouchable, and the trap of shadows had been sidestepped, at least for now. It wasn't victory yet, but it was survival. And survival was the first step toward lasting change. Harborgate struck back with polished smiles and poisoned terms. In a private meeting, their vice president slid a draft across the table. "We'll keep the contract," she said smoothly. "Door 5B can reopen with additional cameras installed. Compromise is good for everyone." Colby's eyes scanned the fine print. Hidden clauses glared like traps. A dead zone allowance buried on page 7. A clause permitting temporary shutdowns of lights for cost efficiency. They weren't offering safety, they were offering optics. Kara's pen tapped the table, sharp as a metronome. "This isn't protection, it's liability laundering." The VP leaned back. "It's the best you'll get without a fight." Colby's voice was ice. "Children are not bargaining chips. I don't make deals that put them at risk." Silence thickened. The VP's smile faltered, but the contract sat untouched. Outside, in the parking lot, Colby exhaled into the night air. For a flicker, the temptation to settle had tugged at him, but principle held stronger. He whispered, steady and sure, "No deals on children, evidence first, then judgment." The chessboard was set. Harborgate had shown its hand. Now it was time for Colby to show his. The next move wasn't confrontation, it was outmaneuvering. Colby tapped Ari's shoulder. "Light it up, but don't trip their contracts." Ari grinned faintly. Already unpacking sensor relays and temporary luminaires, they worked with the city facilities team under Councilwoman Dana's quiet approval. By nightfall, the once dark corridor glowed white and steady. The trick was in the wiring. The lights drew from independent circuits, clean of Harbor Gate's monitoring system. No vendor clauses triggered, no contractual traps sprung. Ari monitored the waveforms on his laptop. Flat, silent, invisible. The system didn't even register the new brightness. Colby walked the corridor slowly, each footstep softened by the new glow. For the first time, he could picture children walking without fear. Their silhouettes clear, shadows cut thin. "They'll hate this," Kara murmured. "Good," Colby replied. "That means it's working." It wasn't rage that filled him now. It was quiet triumph. Ethics had guided the tactic. No corners cut, no risks gambled. Just a loophole turned inside out, used for safety instead of harm. Colby whispered as he touched the cool steel of the door frame. No more shadows. The corridor gleamed, not just with light, but with defiance. The moral twist was complete. He hadn't fought by their rules, he'd rewritten them. The public hearing brimmed with tension. Parents, residents, council members, all eyes fixed on the exhibits projected onto the chamber wall. Access logs, camera stills, the technician's damning email, the city map glowing with outage nodes. Kara's voice was calm, every syllable honed to a blade. "This isn't hypothetical, this is documented negligence. These children were placed at risk because of systemic shortcuts." The Harbor Gate representatives shifted, mumbling about budget efficiency, contractual norms, but their words wilted under the light of the evidence. Councilwoman Dana Keegan leaned forward. "The motion is to terminate the override practice and to adopt the LitRoots pilot program." All in favor, hands rose one after another. The vote was unanimous. The gavel tapped once. Clean. Final. Colby sat still, his jaw tight. Relief pulsed, but he wouldn't let it show as triumph. This wasn't about him. It was about children who deserved to walk home in light, not shadows. He whispered to himself, "Justice's process." And today, the process worked. The board had been forced to bend. The city had chosen light. And the fight that began with one blue backpack was now written into policy. Friday evening, Maya and Dean walked home under a canopy of new streetlights, their laughter spilling into the night air. The blue backpack glowed under the lamps. No longer a warning, just a child's bag under safe skies. Lee walked beside them, relief softening her features. Colby stood a pace behind, hands in his pockets, eyes steady. He didn't smile wide. He didn't need to. The light itself was proof enough. Weeks later, the city unveiled the LitRoots map. An open API allowed neighborhoods to track safe corridors, report outages, and demand brighter paths. What began as one landlord's fury had become a civic tool. Colby funded a secure housing set-aside, ensuring vulnerable families had access to protected buildings. His wealth had bought more than property now. It had bought safety, dignity, light. As children crossed streets under warm pools of brightness, Colby whispered the words he'd sworn from the beginning. A child's dignity comes first. Always. The story didn't end with a hero's victory lap. It ended with a culture shift. Shadows were no longer ignored. Patterns were no longer invisible. And one quiet landlord had proven that watching closely, acting lawfully, and refusing compromise could light an entire city. The war was over, the path was lit, and the lesson was clear. Every child deserves a bright way home.